Trustee Bear? Trustee Bettinger? Here. Trustee Johnson? Trustee Knudsen?
Here.
Trustee Meck?
Here.
Trustee Pattison? And Mayor Bachman.
Here. All right, we have a quorum, and so we can continue. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to that effect, please?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Next on the agenda is announcements. I don't have any announcements except to say for the public, when you do come up to the microphone, turn it on, make your comments, then turn it off. There are some Clorox wipes there. If you need to wipe the thing down, please do so. But if you don't turn it on, then nobody can hear you when you make a public comment. Okay. Anyone else have an announcement? All right, seeing none, let's move on to recognition of visitors and guests. Cassandra? No, she's not here yet. Okay, well, does anyone else want to address the board on something that is not on the agenda? Ah, there she is. All right, seeing none, then Cassandra, please come to the microphone and turn it on. Everyone, this is Cassandra Schenk. Okay. All right, there's a gray button on the microphone that says talk. Thank
How's
you.
that? Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to. How's that? Okay. So I am from the Lambert Grange, number 439, and we have been here in Paonia since the 1930s. Prior to me, Carla Chapey was the Grange master. She was the master for about 30 years. And the reason I called Mary and offered to come today is because well, there's a lot, it's kind of a long story, but I'll give you some history of the Grange. I'm going to spend 8 more minutes just talking a little bit about the Grange and what I think it could do for the town. So you might not know this, but the Grange was formed in 1867 by Abraham Lincoln, and the purpose of the Grange was to help America recover after the Civil War. As you can imagine, after the Civil War, the country was in disarray. The South was a mess. There were a lot of widows. So they formed the Grange to be a fraternal organization, but it's unique. Based on the Masons, it's unique in that anyone of any race or any gender can occupy the highest levels. So right now we have a Grange master at the state. Her name is Cindy Greer. So it's like a fraternal organization, but it's open. So this was very forward thinking of Abraham Lincoln. And he basically wanted this Grange to go to the South to help rebuild and to give people a way to connect and to give farms a way to work together. So they were successful in fighting the railroad, which had a monopoly and was setting the price on cotton. That's just an example. So that's our legacy. So here locally, in recent years, we have done a lot of things you might not know. Actually, the Grange has built the recycling tubs. We at one time had recycling tubs all the way down to Olathe. Since 1994, we've had a junior Grange. We won the Cherry Days Parade in 2011. I have been the junior Grange leader for many years. That's where my heart is. And now I'm here talking to you as the new master. I was elected last spring, right before COVID. And I think that the really most important thing that I want you to hear is that when Abraham Lincoln set the Grange in place, he set a legislative structure in place, unlike any other. And so what I mean is that we have a process, and it's very formal, where we motion and we go through the state and all the way to Washington. And it is nonpartisan. And that is why a lot of people might not know about the Grange, but in politics, we're not lobbyists. We're truly speaking for the people. And so it's been in my heart to come forward here to you, as well as to the community, as a service, to help us understand how we can function as a community, how we can make decisions, how we can navigate when there's so much polarization. So we have developed a curriculum, and we're prepared to offer it for free if you're interested. And you can think about, you know, the time and the investment that it would mean for you to do this, to take a risk and do this. So I can answer any questions about how that could look. We could tailor it to what the town board feels is most pressing. And what it would do for you, I think, it would open you up in a little bit, maybe in a little way, of realizing that if we rethink conflict, we can gain from it. We can actually benefit from it. We can actually come together and make better decisions. It's not easy. Our founding fathers didn't agree. They worked through it. You might not know this, but the Wright brothers argued so much that their sister threatened to leave the house, and yet they invented the airplane. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity we have in our small towns to really kind of grab the bull by the horns and be leaders and say, you know what? People are always going to disagree. And how can we take that passion and put it to work for us? And I think we've got some tips and some different ways of thinking that might help you. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks and take any questions you might have.
Okay, questions for Cassandra from the board? Yes, Tammy.
So I'm really interested in this. I'm watching Amend on Netflix, if anybody's watching that, about post-Civil War and the 14th Amendment. And I would be very interested in this. I do want to ask what kind of time you're looking at. I mean, how long does this take? Is it spread out over a long period? Is it just a couple of sessions? I mean, I'm very interested, but would just like to have an idea of what kind of time.
Okay.
I would be all for this if the time is doable for me and others.
So we could do a 45-minute working session. We could start with that and do a series of maybe one working session every month for 3 months. We could just do one. But with that kind of time, with 45 minutes or even with 2 hours, you know, we could do it more interactive, do some case scenarios, do some problem solving work. We could actually tackle some real issues that you're dealing with right now. So it depends on what you want. But I think even with a 45-minute session, we could get a lot done. One 45-minute session. Yeah.
Any other questions for Cassandra? Yep.
Well, you know, that's a great question, Karen. I think I would like to offer it for the board for several reasons. And then I'll say that Mary suggested we also offer something else something similar perhaps for the town. I think they're both needed. I'm more interested in working with the board because you, when you come to these board meetings, are putting your best self here. You're representing the town, and you're already in that place of trying to be constructive. So I think that would make it a unique content that we would deliver to you because of that. We probably could get right down to some things that when we look at broadening it out for the community, we would facilitate it differently. I think it'd be good to do both, though.
Okay. Other questions for Cassandra? Well, I think this is a wonderful idea. I would not have invited her to come here if it wasn't, in my opinion, something that's really a great idea. So the question is for the board, what would you like to do with this? We could possibly set up a 45-minute work session prior to a board meeting. We could have just a 45-minute work session scheduled at a different time. We could set up a longer 2-hour training. What would you guys like? Yeah, Dave.
See,
Read it again.
can I use your mic, Mary? It seems like starting out with a 45-minute, one thing that we haven't done as a board is kind of regroup about our previous retreats and see if we're still on track and help the staff with priorities. And we had that discussion in the finance and personnel meeting, so maybe we set an hour and a half and we have 45 minutes with this, and then 45 minutes recapping our retreats and making sure we're still all on the same page. That's a suggestion.
Okay, I think that's a great suggestion. Anybody else have a different idea? No? Okay, well, shall we go ahead and try and schedule something now? Get it on our books and let's go forward? I'm assuming we want to do this outside of a regular board meeting. Okay. So,
And I don't really have any restrictions. My work is flexible. So, you know, what works for you, I would try to work around.
okay. So we have a planning commission tomorrow, or Thursday. What about no, I won't be here. What about the week of April 4th? Sometime maybe Tuesday night, the 6th? Would you rather do it, we could do it earlier in the day rather than doing it at 6:30, you could do it like at 5? 5? Okay, well, why don't, if that works for you, Cassandra, let's go ahead and say that we're going to do this April 6th at 5:30. Or 5 o'clock, I'm sorry.
5 o'clock on April 6th.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much for doing this for us. I think it's really important. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. And we'll see you in April.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right. Anyone else want to address the board on something that is not on the agenda? Yes, Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thomas Markle, 302 2nd Street. A couple things I wanted to mention. One, trash cans look awesome. Thank you, Travis. Two, I spoke with Dan Reardon today, and his preference for communication is electronic, and we don't currently have a form for building applications that can be filled out electronically. So you have to print the form, fill it out by hand, scan it, and then send it back to him, or possibly Amanda scan it and send it back for us. So I was wondering if it could be made a priority for town to make forms electronically fillable. I think it would be worth the investment in time very, very quickly to do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Thomas. Anyone else like to? Suzanne?
Okay, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I just heard Dan Reardon's name mentioned. And I'd like to tell the board, I believe you've betrayed the public's trust. Last year, a lot of people came into this room and expressed their concerns with what we have going on with the building department. A lot of people have problems with Dan Reardon and Colorado Code Consulting. A lot of people have problems with the expense of the program. You've transferred, I mean, all the town pays for the building department is $1,000 a year. That's what you've budgeted. Everything else comes at the expense of the applicants. I think at one time, the mayor said the reason why we all have to contribute to the trash program is because that's what a town does. We're all into this together. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case with the building department. So at that time, a lot of people wondered why the contractors weren't showing up. They showed up the first meeting, and then you really never saw them again. Well, I think they were wise to how this town operates. You know, for them to stick their necks out there and put a bad foot forward where they have to, their livelihood depends on this building inspector. And the last thing they want to do is piss him off. So I was really excited to see the committee, the Governmental Affairs Committee, really got onto this. And you guys made a decision in December saying you canceled the contract, the annual contract, and you agreed to extend it for 3 months while Corinne looked into this, and then do it from month to month. Well, allowing your town administrator to say it's not going to be until next January is not acceptable. That's too long. It needs to be looked into sooner. There are many people who spoke out against the building inspector, and that doesn't serve them well now. I just think that people expected something to be done. I don't think you have to wait to see if perhaps you can get some fancy county-wide program with all the towns. That doesn't sound reasonable to me. It doesn't sound very doable. And Hotchkiss lost their building inspector last year, and they had a new one hired within 3 weeks. I don't understand why it's so difficult for Paonia to address this issue and take care of it. So I would expect you hopefully to do something a little bit sooner than punting it until 2022. And then it's not even for sure. That's when they'll start considering it. But in that time, Cedar Edge, they're still spending $13,000 on their building inspector. Paonia is expecting the town of Paonia to pick up the tab, all the people who are using him, to the tune of at least $28,000. That's not acceptable. Whenever the employees have an insurance policy that they're not getting a good enough deal on, toot sweet, you're on it. You're on it. You find the cheapest deal for the employees, for the town. But when it comes to this building inspector, you have us strapped with possibly the most expensive building inspection program in Western Colorado. And it's really shameful. And to let people stick their necks out and tell you what they really think, and then to like pull the life raft out, that's not right. It's not cool. And I don't think you've done anybody a service. You've betrayed our trust. Thank you.
Turn off the microphone. Thank you, Suzanne. All right. Anyone else want to address the board on a subject that's not on the agenda? Yes. Please come up, state your name and address.
Went the building inspector. And there was a really nice family in town. The woman worked at the bookstore. I don't remember what her husband did, but they were very nice. And he had awesome children, teenagers in high school. He was on the wrestling team and star. She was a star volleyball and soccer player, honor roll students. They were fantastic. And in Montana, everybody buys 40 acres in the woods and then they build a house. And of course they run out of money before the house is finished. And then they move in and they, work on it for the rest of their lives. And this family, because there was no building inspection, moved into their house. And it was sitting up on a deck. and they had a railing on it, and they had a swing on the deck. But they had a deck, but they had no railing because they ran out of money. And the daughter was swinging on that swing, and the swing broke, and she went off, and she's in a wheelchair to this day. She spent the rest of her life in a wheelchair. And that was because we didn't have a building inspector. If we'd had a building inspector, they would not have allowed them to move into the house before the safety precautions were in place. I'm sorry to say this, but quite frankly, I just believe we're too stupid to take care of ourselves, and that's why we have building inspectors. I personally have dealt with Dan Reardon on multiple projects, and I've never had anything but professionalism and an easy time, mainly because I believe the building inspection and all the rules and regulations are there for a reason, and they're to protect us from ourselves, from doing something stupid like moving into an unsafe house. So I'm here to talk about something completely different, but I just wanted to give my opinion of all my experience with Dan has been fantastic. I work with him, he works with me, I've built lots of buildings, and he's always been fantastic. So I don't know exactly what the issue is here, but I just wanted to give my response.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Oh, sorry, Christine.
Christina Patterson, Price Road. We're not talking about getting rid of the building department or the building codes. We're just, I don't know if you were at that meeting, but there were a lot of contractors that had issues, that's all. Just to clarify, and it wasn't about getting rid of, in totality, the building codes or the building department.
All right, thank you. All right, one last call. All right, seeing none, let's move on to staff reports, administrator's report. Corinne?
Okay, I've included in the packet a written report and just a couple things to add. I did want to remind everyone that the Planning Commission meeting for the Riverbank Neighborhood Subdivision is 5 p.m. on Thursday. I have received a variance application for the street grade for Clark's End Development. The application is under review and contingent, of course, upon it being deemed complete, it would go to the Planning Commission in April. And also, I received a recommendation, we all received a recommendation from One Delta County to evaluate as individual communities incentives for development within town limits. They're really looking to see what kind of incentives they could offer for new businesses that are looking to move into a community. City of Delta has a draft resolution that they are looking at and reviewing, and I plan to send that out to the board for review and bring the discussion forward on an agenda in the near future, and that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Corinne. Any questions for Corinne from the board? Yeah, Bill.
I see in your notes that the JDS Hydro report has been put off for a while. I'm really disappointed in that. I think that was one thing that the board has been looking forward to because it's going to weigh heavily on our decisions what we do with Riverbank and other developments. So I realize you got pressure from CDPHE to get other projects done, but we need that report. And I see that you have a date that you expect it to come in front of the board with in the future, but we've had that several times. So I basically am expressing my dissatisfaction with that. Second thing is Travis's license is out of date and inadequate for the license that the state has listed as we need. And I was wondering if you had a backup plan in case it doesn't get upgraded.
So Travis's license are completely current. The original deadline given for any ORC who needed updated certificates based on a change in water classification is March 31st. He's registered for all of the classes, and we've spoken with CDPHE on any delays in them because they are doing those, trying to do them electronic, virtual, remote, but there's a lot of things you have to put into place so that they can observe the entire time. They will grant an extension, but he is not out of compliance or out of date with any certifications.
Well, I know the test is difficult. Have you contemplated or formulated a backup plan?
A backup plan for what?
Well, in case Travis doesn't make it.
CDPHE will provide an extension to the deadline for him to have the updated certifications. It does not change any of the testing and things that he's doing at the plant currently.
Yes, Tammy.
So I'm curious, have you applied for an extension?
We have not. His tests are scheduled. So as long as we get confirmation that they've approved this room for the proxy, then it will be fine. If not, the extension at that time would be given.
Okay. The reason I ask is the October 8th sanitary survey under the operator section says that the town's water system will be classified as a B drinking water treatment system and a 3 distribution system, and the department recommends beginning to take the required testing soon enough to ensure there's adequate certification when the facility changes classification. It is already on the reporting documents that it has changed. It also says that you're to be sure to communicate to the department by December 31st, 2020 if you want to pursue an extension of the facility classification requirements. Did you wish a request for an extension?
A formal request was not been submitted, but conversations have been ongoing with CDPHE, yes.
Can you send me your correspondence with them? What I see is that we are out of compliance, that Travis is out of compliance, and he has till the 31st. What is the plan if he fails? If he fails the test, yes.
I'd have to come back with an answer to that. This is the first time I've been asked that.
I don't understand. I think we had mentioned it, do you have a contingency plan? If not, you should. I would like to know what your contingency plan is. I think Trustee Bear has a very valid question. What is the contingency plan if he fails? What if they don't issue you an extension? We have an operator who is operating below his certification level. We need to fix that. And you've known about this for a very long time.
Sure, Bill?
On a slightly different subject, the sewer plant, we were fined for numerous different problems in the sewer plant for $4,250, and this, I think it was late fourth quarter. And then when I examined the EPA ECHO website today, I see that now they have it colored yellow for a violation in the first quarter of 2021. I was wondering if you could explain that.
I haven't reviewed the EPA website, and this is the first I've heard of it, so I would have to look at the EPA website to see what that violation is. All communications that I've had with CDPHE, we've had no new violations since October of last year.
And then on the subject of the sewer plant, I understand that in not the near future, but in the future, we're going to have our permit parameters are going to be greatly reduced on a number of constituents. And I wondered if you guys have had any conversation about how you're going to meet those. Nitrogen, ammonia, I think it was phosphorus, and other ones that are going to be greatly reduced. And I'm concerned that the Paonia is going to get caught in a trap of having to comply with the regulation from the health department, and our sewer plan is not adequate to take care of it. And the time to be planning for those things is now.
Those are being addressed, I believe that's exactly what's being addressed in the additional CIP that's been added on to SGM's engineering plan that they're currently working on.
Yes, Tammy.
Okay, what Mr. Bear is referring to is a quarter 13 covering January 1 to March 21, facility level violation identified. I would like to know, this is clearly, it sounds to me like a reporting. The violation that preceded it was a reportable non-compliance. I'd like to know if Mr. Loberg was aware of this and why he didn't bring it to the Public Works Committee, if he did know. I mean, if he doesn't know how to report. If he does know, I think we should have known about this. We were assured at a meeting within the last month that there would be no more new violations.
Those violations were the ammonia limits on a rolling average.
So you were aware there was a violation when Administrator Ferguson told us there were no more violations?
It was reported. There hasn't been any new violations in this quarter that I am aware of that I have received.
I'm looking at it.
I will have to look at it too. I have not seen it. I have not had any recorded from the state health department that I'm aware of.
No, and I'd like to bring that up. We have had conversations about the ammonia. That's why we did the additives and had the conversation about the fact that the ammonia violation is not a singular violation, but it's an average over a rolling period of time. So it's not, that's an accumulative. So we're sending in the ammonia testing on a regular basis, and then accumulatively over a 12-month period of time, when they look at the end of that year, they've said, wow, your ammonia level spiked over an average. And we have had multiple conversations about that at the public level as well as in our committee meeting.
So what this says is it's a quarterly non-compliance report history. We asked you a couple of months ago if you foresaw any more violations. I did not understand, and you did not, I mean, we even pointed to this, and you didn't understand that it was, we were asking if there were more violations. You said no. You didn't say, yes, another violation is going to show up on this report. So to see this violation, please understand, we see it as a violation. You see it as something you were expecting. We did not. That's the problem. So I think we understand now, but a violation identified is a big red flag for us. So thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, Tim.
I have something on another subject, and that's the tree board ordinance, which is included in the packet. Which is not included in the packet, or it is included, I'm sorry, but I would like to make a motion to bring this back to the board for corrections and clarifications.
Are you looking at what is on Muni Code right now?
No, I am looking at the Ordinance 2020-05, which there's a Scribner's error correction made. I was challenged this morning by we do listen to citizens. I was challenged this morning by a citizen to find some errors in this. And so I sat down this afternoon and I went over it, and I did find errors. And I would like to bring this ordinance back to the board to see if we can correct those errors. I'd be happy to point them out if you'd like.
Okay. Yes, Bill.
I'd like to follow up on a couple of the public works questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just kind of, if I may, Mayor, yeah, point of procedure here. With respect to the clerk's report, I think we want to kind of stay within the focus there. With respect to this tree board concern and this ordinance, certainly we can have that discussion and we could take that under advisement. I'm not aware of what the errors are. I'd be happy to kind of listen to what Ms. Meck has to say. Coupled with that is that we do have the provision in our code if there is a Scrivener's error or there's a cross reference that's incorrect, that we could either remedy that or we could reintroduce it, if you will. So just wanted to kind of put that out there procedurally, if you will.
Would you like to address that? How many do you find? Let's start there.
Just a couple, but I think they're significant.
So are they Scrivener's errors or are they?
No.
Okay, then we probably need to bring it back to the board and discuss that as an agenda item.
So I will provide those
Thank
then
you.
between now and the next meeting?
Yes,
Okay, so in the meantime, this will not be signed, is that correct?
correct. Yeah,
Okay,
it'll
thank
be
you.
signed when it is complete.
Thank you.
Okay. Bill?
I wanted to refute attorney's comments on when to bring stuff back up. Although Travis is listed as the operator, Corinne is the responsible person. I think these questions should be addressed to the responsible person.
All right, any other questions for Corinne from the board? Okay, yes, Dave.
First of all, there's a lot of tension around this, and the water situation and the sewer situation have been bothering citizens here for quite a while. And I know Bill and Tammy have worked their tails off trying to get a handle on this, and we now have a water board that's supposed to work on it too. There's a lot of frustration about reports not coming in on time. There's a lot of frustration about going into a website and all of a sudden getting surprises that we didn't expect. So we feel like we're out of the loop. One of my referrals in my consulting business has a company in Ridgeway where she does all the reporting for towns. And she does that on a contract basis at a fairly reasonable rate. I made that referral to the town. That might be one way to at least backfill us and give us a plan B so that we have something in place that can certify and do the reports in the meantime. So I just wanted to bring that up. I've made that referral. It might be the time to pull the trigger on something like that.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions from the board? Okay, anything from the public? Yes.
Sorry, we all have to get back into this, don't we? I'm at 215 Delta Avenue, and I just have a question that I appreciate that Cammie Long's report is on the town webpage, but I was wondering if you could also add all the appendices. There's numerous appendices that definitely help a person understand the report, including, as I understand it, you can see what she said about your own right-of-way trees. And I believe that's in there. So if there's a way, I know it's a lot, but I think we need the full report. If you could add that, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Any other? Yes, Suzanne.
I'm not used to speaking with a mask on, trying to project my voice anymore. So trying to get back into this. So the thing about the Scrivener's error, it's actually kind of funny because you actually voted to repeal another ordinance that was in the code unknowingly when you voted on this. So in a way, it's more than a Scrivener's error because there was actually an action that happened. So I appreciate the desire to actually look at it more closely again. And then other than that, there's a letter in the administrator's report from me, and it is my concern with the misinformation that was presented by the town on the radio. So I don't know if you've had time to look at it, but, and I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Perhaps in the next meeting, we can bring this forward. But I would like to ask you, how does the town correct misinformation that's put out in the news? I'd like to know how we might identify that process. And that would be in the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to Public Works and Utilities and Facilities. Travis?
Starting to do a lot of work in the parks, trying to get them ready for springtime. Do have a written report submitted to you guys, and then if you guys have any questions.
Okay, questions for Travis from the board? Okay, Tammy?
First of all, I would like to request that the Public Works Committee be there when the project bids are open. So if you could keep us informed, if that would be kosher to do.
Okay.
We would like to be there when those are open.
For the street repairs?
Yes.
Okay.
Bill?
Concerning the drinking water enforcement and the plan to return to compliance for the unresolved violations, I was looking at correspondence, I don't know exactly when the date it was, but it had several of them that weren't in compliance yet. The consumer report, failure to distribute, the annual report, and the uncontrolled cross connections, and the sample sites. Are those all in compliance now?
All of them except for the cross connection control.
And what's the deal with that?
I'm still working with the state health department, working on getting all of that report finalized.
And when do you expect to get that done?
By the end of April is when we're gonna make sure we have everything done.
So we expect all those issues to be put to bed by the end of April?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Tammy?
Yeah, Travis, I'd like to know the number 12, working with SGM on long-term treatment solution for CIP. Is that part of the T119, the clock operation? The state resolution was to provide detailed operational procedures for polymembrane integrity testing in CIP. Is that what that is for?
No, ma'am. That is for the wastewater treatment plant on the ammonia and the new regulations that could possibly come out in the lower limits with our new permitting.
Okay, and you said that both those T119s, the clock operations, the skid steer and the Lamborn plant, the locate the block and bleed assembly, you said you ordered parts to expose the block and bleed assembly. Those are the ones you say are complete now?
They are complete except for the written procedure on when you check those when you're doing a CIP.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Travis from the board? Okay, seeing none, anything from the public? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the police report. Chief Ferguson?
As you can see from the blotter, we've been covering some of the calls from Hotchkiss. Everything's going well. I haven't heard anything negative. If anybody has or anything positive, I'd like to know. I don't get on the social media, so I don't know what people are saying about it. Car's doing very well. I'm about 99% put together in it. Went to turn on my wig-wag lights today, and my wig-wag lights didn't work. So I gotta tear some stuff apart tomorrow. Hopefully by the end of the week, we'll get it down to get the cage put in it, and it'll be on the road. The officer's next scheduled shift, which is Wednesday. We are having a lot of calls about workers' comp fraud. At least every day there's a new call in the county that somebody is saying that they have workman's comp fraud. Basically what they're doing is they're calling them, telling them that their extra stimulus is in or for workman's comp. Give them your information and they'll make sure that you get your new check and everything like that. Don't fall for it. Don't give out any information over the phone. Never give out any information over the phone unless you know who you're talking to. Also, we are having a lot of calls about people saying that they are the police. They are going to take you to jail if you do not go down and get cards from the store, and then that's how you can pay your bond. That's not true. First of all, we're not going to let you know if you have a warrant. We're just going to come pick you up. Second of all, that's not the way you get bonded out of jail. You go down to the jail and get bonded out. If you get any of these calls, or if you're concerned that you may have a warrant like they say that you do, please contact us. We'll run your name. We'll make sure that you don't have a warrant. If you do, of course, you have to go to jail. But most of them that we've had do not have warrants, and it's just another scam. Somebody actually got taken for $1,100 last week. So just be very vigilant on what you're doing with your personal information. And it's out there. You've got the people that $1,100 in 2 hours is, you know, pretty darn good money if you can get a couple of them a week. So just be careful and protect yourself. And that's about all I have.
Okay, question for the chief. Yes.
Hotchkiss, how long do you expect that to continue?
At this point in time, I do not know. I had spoken to Marshall Miller Thursday. He's not sure, so we're going to plan on another schedule with covering it. It could end before that other schedule is up. It just depends.
One more question, maybe the attorney can answer this. Is there any kind of indemnification that Hotchkiss and Paonia have?
Yeah, we have an agreement in place where Hotchkiss is agreeing to indemnify Paonia for the officer service.
Yes, Tammy.
Yeah, Chief Ferguson, do you know if any of these fraud, the workers' comp and the other fraud you talked about, do you know if they're being disseminated to the local media?
I'm not sure if they are to the local media, just blotter-wise usually. I do make a couple posts every once in a while about it on our Facebook page, the police department Facebook page, and the sheriff's department does as well to put it out there a little bit more. We probably need to, with the way that it's amping up, we probably wouldn't hurt getting something out there a little bit more.
So do you think contacting the county would be contacting Sheriff Taylor, or I don't know who I'd contact at the county level?
They have more than what we have. We have probably, I'd say we get them maybe once a week. They get them almost daily. It's not just the sheriff's department though. It's also, you know, Delta PD gets some. But whenever I'm listening to my radio, you can hear it's almost daily that somebody's coming in for a fraud call now.
Thank you.
Dave.
Several months ago, we saw a lot of activity in the code enforcement area, and I was curious what the follow-up has been for that, Chief.
So far, we're getting ready to hit code enforcement again. Joanne's going to be out there, starting the same thing that she was doing last year. So that way she can go ahead and start writing out those letters again whenever we start going forward, as now spring's coming and everything, or spring's here, I guess. Now the spring is here, so yes, they will be starting to go out again.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Okay, seeing none. Anything from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
So I appreciate the information that Neil has given us about the fraud. I don't know, I know some of you have older parents, but it's really, my dad was kind of at the butt of a scam, you know, when he was 90 years old, well, 89. And it's amazing how these people that you've always looked up to, you know, seniors, and they've been able to help you direct your life and make good choices. It's amazing how they can fall victim to these things. I saw it happen with my father. And I was in another state. I was here, he was in another state, and I was calling the sheriff out there, calling the police. No money had passed hands. It was just this conversation he kept having with someone from Bermuda on the telephone. And which is kind of funny, but at the same time, I felt really helpless because he would not listen to me. I was trying to reason with him and just find the logic, because me yelling at him would just shut him off and he wouldn't communicate anymore. So what I was wondering, and I know it's hard to get a hold of people sometimes, because when people are seniors especially, sometimes they don't have a lot of contact with other people. But I know that we have the senior center here. I haven't been to a seniors meeting in a long time. I don't know how well attended the seniors meetings are. Are they not at all?
It's not even running at this point in time.
Because it's too bad there isn't some way to kind of have an outreach, maybe with our police department, and somehow contact or be able to express this to seniors or to people who might be at risk, to where they feel like they can ask you questions as someone in authority. You know, ask you, maybe you're someone they would believe,
And
you
I
know?
would be happy to put something on or,
Yeah.
you know, something like that, just to get the word out there even more. That's something that definitely I would
Okay.
be willing to do.
And maybe even collaborate with the county sheriff too. I don't know, have two faces there. It's just a thought, and I don't know how you might implement that, but yeah, I appreciate the information. And it's really very real, and it's very scary. Okay, thanks.
Well, and the bad thing is that 90% of them don't come from the United States. So as soon as they
Yeah.
get your money, you're pretty much out.
Yeah, my dad was sure he was going to get a brand new car, but all
Right.
he had to do was send them, like, wire them $5,000, and they cut it down to 1,000.
Right.
And he was going to try to negotiate to 100, but I was like, anyway, it was really wild how they get into your brain. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to finance report. Cindy?
So I was looking through the packet because I was looking for something and realized that my written report didn't end up in the packet. I apologize. I think that was my fault. Anyway, let me think. Year-end entries are substantially complete. I hope to get the trial balance to the auditors by tomorrow evening. We finished up, and the information I sent the Colorado Department of Revenue on the exempt fuel audit was accepted on the 10th. The fund balance policy and fund balance and financial policy is still with the Finance Committee. It will be discussed further tomorrow at the 9:30 meeting. PTO is still being discussed with the Finance Committee. It'll be discussed again tomorrow at the 9:30 meeting. We are still trying to find a solution to Rocky Mountain no longer providing group health insurance. And I've talked to CML, and we are waiting for some more information to come back from that. We have come out of the blackout period for the retirement plan. Our representative will be here Thursday to get all the employees enrolled and their investments set up, and then there was just updates on how much grant money is pending. That's the end. If anybody has any questions.
All right, questions for Suzanne, or for Cindy? God. Bill?
I had a couple of questions, and one of them is the audit report. I know it may be early, but when do you expect that to be back?
So the audit is set for the 12th of April. They will be here that entire week. I don't expect them to have, it's due that's what I think it's July 31st. So it will be, after we go through, the field work on the week of April 12th. It usually takes them a month or so to put that together. So I would take a wild guess that, and it's a wild guess, but maybe they'll be here to present it around the 1st of June.
Oh, okay, thank you. Second question I had was concerning the financials in the packet on page 35. You have the Norris retirement, and I see for the month of February you have the normal $1,680, but in January there was $21,840.
That's an audit entry. I just have to go, I missed it when I was correcting the audit entries. I have to go back and fix that.
So that'll just turn into the 1680.
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions from the board? Okay, I do have one question, Cindy. On the financials, again on page 35 under water, we have water taps with revenue of $500 for both January and February, and I was wondering what that is?
Those are people that bought taps before the moratorium went into effect, and they are making their final payments.
Okay, thank you.
Correct? We'd have to double check that, but that should be what it is.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the board? All right, seeing none, anything from the public? Yes, Suzanne.
People making their final payments. Can you hear me? Okay. People making their final payments on the water taps that they bought before the moratorium, have they been paying a standby fee all that time, even though it wasn't paid off?
Yes.
Oh, it's beneficial. It wasn't on. The red was on, but it's beneficial for the entire community to hear about the nonprofits because who knows, we might want to volunteer or offer support too, and it's just nice to know there are a lot of new faces in the community now and who don't know about these nonprofits at this point in time. So I don't know if the people who we've donated to can maybe over the next few months come and make presentations. Thank you. It's been hard with the phone, I know, but thanks.
Yes, Dave.
There we go. I just wanted to point out that during the budget hearing, many of those nonprofits did show up while we were doing our budget and made presentations then. And in the case of hospice, and we've had some discussions about how we're going to do this differently because one of our trustees, Trustee Pattison, pointed out that there's a lot of nonprofits that may not be accessing this, and we need to figure out a more fair way to distribute the money. Sometimes.
Which boring times of the year are we talking about? Okay, and Trustee Pattison did have a question too about the space to create, and she wanted to know if we could possibly use this in combination with COVID relief funds for a housing survey. And I don't believe that's we can't do that because those funds are from the Betcher Foundation, and the Betcher Foundation has said we can keep them with the proviso that they go to help the Creative District, and a housing survey is not going to do that. Okay. Yes, Christie.
Christina Patterson. I was just wondering, I didn't see any of that Chesnick restitution on there. Is that still happening?
Yeah, it is still happening. Usually we pay in 2-month increments just based on the way that the funds come in. Yeah, our office collects it into our trust account and then we distribute that to the town. I'm not.
In this year? That was, so what the last check we got was mostly 2020 money, so it had to be recorded in 2020. There was only, I think, $75 that was related to this year. And that entry hasn't been made yet.
So $75 in 4 months for 2021. Okay. And there was a reimbursement grant that was given to the town for $125,000, as I recall, and $55,000 went to businesses. And then what was the extra $70,000 earmarked for?
The complete breakdown of where the majority of that has been expended, there's a little bit that hasn't been expended yet, was included in the last packet, and I would need to pull that to provide you where that all went. $55,000 went to businesses, and then $10,000 went to the North Fork Senior Connections, who provided that as individual grants to community members who lived in the community that were able to apply for that. And then the remaining went for COVID things for the town, such as banners, PPE, sanitizer, the guards that we had to put up in town hall. There's a plethora of things that were included in the last packet, and I can get that for you.
Okay, anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the attorney's report. Mr. Nerlin. Oh, well, I said.
Thank you, Mayor. So my report is included in the packet. As I indicated, we've got an updated ordinance for the board to consider on the marijuana regulation based on the workshop that we had on March 16th. Subsequent to this, we will get to the GAPS committee a proposed Board of Adjustment, Board of Appeals ordinance for review. Dark Skies Paonia provided us with outdoor lighting regulations draft ordinance last week. Just based on scheduling and review, we'll look to get that in the board before the board in April. There's also a resolution continuing our local disaster declaration through the end of 2021, with the caveat that certainly the board has the authority and the ability to opt out of that emergency declaration if they feel like it's appropriate based on circumstances. And then lastly, Corinne and I had a meeting with the Delta County Attorney and the Delta County Administrator with respect to some just preliminary discussions on the North Fork Valley Airport. And I anticipate that in the coming months we'll get an agenda item before the trustees for some further discussion.
Okay, questions for the attorney from the board? Okay, seeing none. Anything from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on then to the treasurer's report. Mr. King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've reviewed the payroll and released payroll for deposit in employee accounts. We've reviewed the disbursements with the Finance and Human Resource Committee and recommend approval. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Treasurer King from the board? Okay, seeing none. Anything from the public? All right, seeing none. Thank you. On to disbursements.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable for $21,335.17, a transfer to Summit of $200,000, payroll taxes of $9,465.17, and a payroll direct deposit of $22,163.30.
Okay, do I hear a second? Discussion from the board, questions? Okay, seeing none, questions from the public? Yes, Thomas.
I just want to bring everybody's attention to this part of the meeting. We usually gloss through it really quickly, and I think it's really important to take a minute and get a little bit of perspective on exactly what we're doing when we spend money in Paonia. And what we're doing is asking the citizens to spend their time. And so if we think about the amount of time that goes into like $30,000 is about what we're talking about spending right now. 22 plus the payroll income, like the, okay, 20 something. It amounts to something like 2,200 hours of work before taxes by Paonians to pay for this month, or this meeting, these 2 weeks. And so I just want to bring that to everybody's attention to possibly add some perspective as to exactly what goes on when we spend money here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Yes, Tammy.
I was thinking. Okay, I'm asking this because I saw it on Trustee Patterson's comments for the meeting. What was the metal that was needed to be cleaned up at the sewer plant? And then I'm just wondering, is Roop like the go-to company for things like this, or I think that might be too small for a bid, but how do you select who does this kind of work?
The metal that was cleaned up was from all the, about 2 years worth of spring cleanup metal that we had stored at the wastewater treatment plant. And he was, I called him and 2 other trucking companies, and he was the only one available to load and haul.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, yes, Suzanne.
I just have a question about the metal. Do we ever have Recla metal recycle that, or was it for some reason unrecyclable?
We did haul it down to Recla Metals.
Okay, and we got the money? The town got the money? Okay. Okay, great, thanks.
All right, anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Let's move on to the consent agenda. So we have regular minutes. We have for the March 9th meeting, work session meeting, and then special event liquor license. Friends of the Paradise Theater. I see Sunshine Night is here. Did you want to say anything about that, Sunshine? Okay. So but if we have questions, we can go to you. Okay, thank you. All right, can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion from the board?
When is the Flying Fork finally going to be open, or is it?
For that, so yeah,
They
that is a
opened
moot
last
question.
Friday.
Okay. Anything from the public? Questions on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. All right. Thank you for showing up, Sunshine. Moving on. Retail marijuana ordinance. 2021 first read. Okay, we have gone over this in work session, and the changes have been made, I believe, that we discussed. Karen.
I have a bunch.
All right, go for it.
In, let's see, section H, the limit is to 12. No, the limit is 6. Total 6, not 12. And I will strongly recommend,
We're
session was, and was specifically brought up, that if there's a dual license for medicinal and recreational, that's 2 separate licenses in one location. Right, 6 locations, but could hold up to 12 licenses.
I'm sorry. If that could be clarified a little bit, I appreciate it. And in the definitions again, where is it? Darn. I have an I here. Let's see. Oh, well, anyway, it's talking about delivery, and delivery to those who are primary caregivers, and then, but is not a primary caregiver. I don't know on that sentence what the but is not a primary caregiver. I didn't. It's in delivery.
Trustee page you're
I
on?
can't find where because I didn't write it down in my notes here.
Was it under the delivery section of the?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't find it right now. But
So-
shall I go on?
Yeah, you certainly you can. I don't know if it warrants it. I think we are on page 3 of the ordinance, looking at 6420 definitions, H and then I.
Okay. Marijuana license cap, 12 local licenses at 6 locations, at a total of 6 locations. And then,
Right.
oh,
So
and
so the
then I.
what you're saying in terms of clarity. I'm sorry, I don't
Yeah.
mean to interrupt. I'm
Go
just
ahead, go
trying to-
ahead, go ahead, Bo.
You're saying that you would prefer something in H that says along the lines of not more than 12 total licenses at 6 locations.
Yes, at a total of 6 locations, yes. And then in I, following that, marijuana store that sells to registered patients or primary caregivers, but is not a primary caregiver.
Yeah, so that's a definition. You can be a defined primary caregiver under the Constitution, where you're allowed to not operate a medical marijuana store, but you're able to apply or provide marijuana to patients. So that's the reason
You're a
that
nominal caregiver, then. You're not really, but is not a primary caregiver is what I'm questioning, the tail end of that sentence.
Right. So what it's saying is that you can be a medical marijuana store, but you cannot be a primary caregiver. You can't be both.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, and 6480, 6480A1, third line from the bottom. From later determining that, just insert the word the proposed license. 6490. Number H should be actually G. There is no G here. So it should be G. And that's on page, page 7 of the
7,
ordinance,
yep.
yeah. And this is again the 6 retail and 6 medicinal, no more than 6 license in G.
12 licenses, but 6
I mean,
facilities.
6 locations.
Yep.
Please. All right, and 64110, the signs. This talks about Chapter 18 of the building code, but I'm still with Suzanne and going that signs belong in the zoning code under Chapter 16. But this is written the way we have it now, so I guess if we changed it, we would change it here. And and after item 3, there's an or at the end of that sentence, and it should just end the sentence. Take out the or. And the effective date.
Right. No.
Effective date on page 13 should be on the 24th day of March, comma, space. Needs a comma and a space. And that's it.
Okay. I guess I would disagree respectfully on the
item 3.
64120A, that it's listing out the reasons for good cause. And so you have the semicolon after 1, semicolon or after 2, and then 3.
No, it's not. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Where's the or? 64110.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Signed and
I
authorized.
agree
Yeah.
respectfully with that.
Yeah, okay. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Yeah, Bill.
On page 71, top of the page, there's discussion about cultivation and manufacturing and distribution and offering for sale. You know, that whole paragraph there leads people to believe that we may be licensed in some of those different license classes, but we are only licensing stores. Is that my understanding? And so what is the reason for having that language in there? Yes, I just don't know why we include all the different manufacturing, testing, distributions, why that's in that paragraph. That these people first of all, led me to believe that we're going to be licensing these, and then I thought, well, maybe it is a cut and paste of a paragraph, and then you're just limiting it to the stores. But I think it's a little bit misleading in there. Maybe clean that up a little bit. And then I had a question just out of curiosity. Marijuana will now become legal in Paonia, but it's not in Delta County. And how is it legal for these people to transport it through Delta County, or how are they going to deliver it? But for people delivering to the stores, how is that going to be handled? Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Dave.
So just to be really clear, if there's a store in marijuana, there's a marijuana store here, can they deliver to someone who lives up on one of the mesas outside of the town limits? Okay, okay. Okay, good. The second one is, and maybe I skimmed and didn't use the level of detail that Trustee Budinger uses, but, and that's why we're on the same team. But I didn't see anything about formula businesses or referring. Did I miss that? Right, right, okay. And then the last one is, could you please walk me through what is in this that would prevent speculation in licenses? Could you take me to the paragraphs that stop people from speculating?
The fact that if you bring a marijuana, if you go to licensure, if you will, you have to use that within 60 days.
What page is that on?
That is on page 9, page 75 in the packet, 6 for, what is that, 100? At the top of page 9, all licensees shall put their license to use within 60 days of issuance.
Gotcha.
So one of the aspects that we looked at is that we didn't want to create a regulatory scheme where somebody goes through and they can just sit on it. And then we also had another provision that limited the transfer of the licensing.
I saw the transfer. That was a year.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
So
Good.
that was the other avenue or aspect in terms of an effort or an attempt to prohibit somebody from just going through the process and then selling out. And then, as you rightfully just pointed out, we have our formula business ordinance. So we'll cross-reference that so that people aren't just focused. If they come in, they're not just focused on this provision.
Great. Thank you.
And I think the other thing that is in this that I noticed is that you have to have a premises. You can't just get a license without a premises. So you have to have a premise when you apply for the license. So that would also prevent speculation. Okay, other comments? All right, seeing none. Anything from the public? Yes, Paige.
Paige Smith, 215 Delta, that the ordinance that was brought before, I think 2 meetings ago, was asking for establishments. And that has been appropriately changed. But there are still a couple pieces in here that are Trojan horses, inadvertent or not, and I'll explain. I had 2 attorneys look at this for me, and I offered to them the language that we voted on and the definitions that came from the Constitution, and then I also provided them this ordinance. So here are the problems. First of all, both attorneys do this kind of work. One in particular worked for a large municipality as their attorney and is now a county attorney, and they both said there's an objective deficiency in this. And here's the problem. If you look at the second whereas, on the first page of the ordinance, page 67 in your packet, it's referencing the Colorado Constitution, and it has changed the definition for marijuana stores. This is not the definition in the Constitution. The definition in the Constitution for a marijuana store, which, oddly enough, is appropriately provided in your definitions on page 69. So you have a huge contradiction here. Your definition on 69 is correct, your whereas is not. The whereas is trying to say that a marijuana store includes cultivation, testing, manufacturing, which is why I believe you're seeing that phrase that Trustee Bear brought up is in here several times. So that is the Trojan horse that I want you all to be aware of. This, we voted, and I want to just say, you all took the time and the consternation to come up with the language we voted on. It was a lot of work for you all. We voted for it. We clearly voted for stores. And I know that's what you all want, are stores. This is a Trojan horse that could open up the gate to all the other 3 types of establishments. And I also want to point out another error, which is on, it's just above, on page 69 of the packet. It's the definition for retail marijuana establishment. This, again, is a constitutional definition which has been changed in this ordinance. It has left out retail marijuana store, which is part of the constitutional definition. So I can't say, I call it a Trojan horse because if I hadn't seen this, you do not know what might have come from this. So I'm just pointing out you have a huge problem. And you know what? It's kind of driving me crazy that me, a citizen who is not an attorney, is pointing these things out to you and your staff. Thank you.
So, I mean, I would be happy to answer that question, and frankly, I don't mean to get into it, and, you know, the caveat that I always give with respect to the limitation of legal advice in an open meeting, but I respectfully disagree with the interpretation that was provided by Ms. Smith. I mean, where we're looking at here with respect to the recital, we're not defining or we're not providing that definition there within the recital. What we're referring to here is the police power that is provided to the town with respect to its ability to, under the Constitution, to regulate things such as marijuana stores and the definition that's provided therein. Further, within the ordinance, we have the definition that was put together, frankly, by the committee, or initially at the committee level, and then incorporated herein, that outlines the definition that the town is looking at. So I reject that the definition, the constitutional definition within the recitals, gives or grants the ability for somebody to come in and ask for a license that's not a retail or a medical license.
All right. Any other comments from the public? Yes. Cecil.
Dale Cecil, 1200 3rd Street. On the issue of license speculation and therefore having to have a business open within 60 days, I would only point out that it takes a lot to build out a facility, and in the event that there's a shortage of contractors or unavailability of a building inspector in order to get a certificate of occupancy, can we at least write something in there or have an understanding that in the event that we get up against that 60-day deadline and you have a business that is applied for and been granted a license but is unable to open within 60 days due to circumstances, would there be some sort of provision to extend that?
Okay. I think that's reasonable. Thank you. Other members of the audience? Just a minute. Thomas?
Just one quick thing. Let's see, I'm on page 5 of the ordinance, page 71 of the packet. There's a note in the second paragraph: a retail marijuana store will be located on the same licensed premises. Let's see, I think that's the right spot. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Where is it? It says that, stores may be operated on the same license. So if there are a limit of 12 licenses, but a medical store and a retail store may be operated on the same license, wouldn't that indicate that there should only be 6 licenses available? Operated by the same licensee. Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I can't read. Thanks.
Very small screens, Thomas. That's the issue. Very small screens. Yep. Okay, anything else? Okay, Paige, if you have new information, we're not going to argue. Okay.
Page Smith, 215 Delta. I just want to point out that you do not want to adopt an ordinance that has a definition in it that does not comport with the Constitution. The Constitution is what gives you the authority to do what you're doing, and you cannot, it's impermissible to change a constitutional definition, which is what you have for establishment, and I again say it's what you have with your second whereas. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Suzanne.
I don't have the ordinance in front of me, so I can't speak too much in detail about it. Next meeting, I'll be a little more prepared. I'm still wondering, what's the difference between a special election and the general election? Was this marijuana election truly a special election? anytime the board asks to be on the ballot during like the presidential general election, is that considered a special election?
Yeah, in my opinion, it was a special election because it was not part of our regular town election. It was a coordinated county election in November.
Was on it, went off, I'm sorry. Yeah, that sounds better. And then keeping the wording as simple as possible, I think, and as clear as possible is always the best choice, I believe, because we might know in this room today what we think this means, but the true test is 5 years from now, 6 years from now, when people say, yeah, sure, that sidewalk money can be used to trim trees, you know, because they're breaking it. But that wasn't, at the time, it wasn't clearly defined. And so same with the marijuana ordinance. I think you have to be very clear when it comes to the language. Number one, it's really long. And so taking out a few words that make it confusing, you know, and maybe focus it more on the stores would be beneficial just for our sake. And then the other question I had at the very end there, they talk about the penalties. There's a penalty, but above it, there's this nuisance thing. And I don't see why a nuisance ordinance is in the marijuana store ordinance. I think the penalty is fine. If you're violating this ordinance that we passed, there's a penalty. But the nuisance ordinance, I believe it belongs somewhere else in the code. And it's a little bit confusing. I think it's the second page from the last. It's confusing to have nuisance and then below it penalty because the penalty clause ordinance, because they almost contradicted each other a little bit. I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me where I can't read it out to you, but thank you.
Anything else from the public? Yes.
Shereen Patterson, 218 Rio Grande Avenue. Shereen Patterson, 218 Rio Grande. Yeah, words are very important. Definitions of words are very important. I want to know, why is this called a medical marijuana ordinance and not cannabis? Or not medical, sorry. Why not a cannabis ordinance? Law in the United States has always called it cannabis. That's the proper word for this plant. What's the basis for choosing marijuana?
The basis is if I may, the basis is the state statute, and the language that the state uses is marijuana and not cannabis.
So we're obliged to use the same language even though it's erroneous?
I don't want to get into the botany, if you will, but you know.
The medical term is cannabis. The botanical term is cannabis. In previous United States law, it's called cannabis. 1961 single convention.
We're using the commonly defined state statutory language.
Actually, marijuana doesn't mean anything. It's a made-up word. We can't change it? Is there a law that it has to be marijuana?
It would be up to the board.
Okay, so I request that it's changed to cannabis. That's the correct word. That's the correct term. That's the proper name of the plant. Marijuana means nothing.
Marijuana, I believe you will find in the Oxford English Dictionary, which means it does have a definition, so it does mean
may have a definition,
something.
But it reeks of prohibition. It reeks of an era that's
Okay.
past, that's over.
Would the board like to change the language from marijuana to cannabis? Yes.
No.
Answer is no. Thank you.
Okay. Prohibition rule.
Suzanne, if you have something new to add.
So we have language in our code right now about marijuana, and I don't know exactly what's how you're going to sift through that and repeal things. But I do want to say there is a definition of marijuana in there that alludes to the whole, to cannabis. It's synonymous. And so there is something in our code already. And maybe you don't want to throw out everything that we have. I don't know when you'll be looking at what we have before you repeal it all and replace it with this ordinance, because I believe there's some definitions that might be helpful that are defined, that are in the state statute. So just bringing that to your attention. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anything else from the public? Oh, go ahead, Bill.
And this is just for my edification, but we contemplate selling marijuana, but the laws concerning consumption that are currently in place in the town still apply, such as smoking on the street, smoking in the park, that kind of stuff.
Okay, since this is a first read, do we need to move and have a motion to accept it as a first read, or do we do that at the next time? Okay. Could I get a motion to that effect?
I move that we deem this as the first reading of the marijuana ordinance as amended.
Okay, and second on that?
I second it.
All in favor?
Nay.
Would you like to come and address the board about this, please?
Hi, I have Karen von Gontard also.
Okay. Hi. I'm Karen von Gontard, and I'm the co-chair with Alicia of Viva La Vida, and we work in cooperation with the Learning Council. Alicia's the ED of the Learning Council. And last summer, in response to COVID, since we're both farmers and we're very enmeshed in the agricultural community of this valley, we recognized that the farmers were really being hit hard by COVID because the farm markets had been closed down across the state or had been drastically reduced. The restaurants were all closed, and so their restaurant contracts were pretty much gone, and they were facing real dire circumstances. So maybe stupidly, I decided I'd start a farm market at my farm up on Lambourne Mesa. And so we got together, the Learning Council and Viva La Vida, and we decided to go ahead and try this, and we had no clue how it would turn out. But to be honest, it was so successful that we outgrew our location already. So even though it was a farm, there was acres and acres. We had the health department came up, Keith came up from Delta and helped us to figure out the best plan, and we worked with the Colorado Farmers Market Association that does a lot of work with the farmers, farm markets all over the state to make sure that they're in compliance and to find ways and tips. And we were really successful at getting grants. As a matter of fact, we got a pretty sizable grant from the state for COVID relief funds. And we even had Senator Bennett come and have dinner with us. It was awesome. He just showed up and talked to everybody. And DMEA and Alpine Bank were immediate sponsors to help us support this. And we grew throughout the summer. It was outside, it was safe because it was distanced, and it was outside, and so the health department was in support of it. And so we carried on through the year until middle of October. And then we realized that we really probably could do a better job if we were more centrally located, where people could walk, could ride their bike. I mean, people toward the end were coming up and going, "Oh my God, this is awesome. I just found out about it." And it was like, well, too late. We're closing. We're done for the season. So we came up with the idea to move it to town, somewhere in town. And the town park seemed like the best venue because it's got all the big trees, so it's shady, and it's central that everybody can walk from wherever they are in town or ride their bike or whatever. The parking wouldn't be such an issue as it was when you have to drive to get to a market. And so that's kind of what we're asking to do. And Alicia will talk about the food program part of it because that was a big, we both organizations have a policy of the gift model. And so we didn't charge any of the farmers anything to come for the craftspeople, and we did have pretty strict controls on what was offered. All the produce had to be grown by farmers locally, had to be from here, from Delta County, from our North Fork Valley, and all of the crafts were local artisans who were making things, either using the products that were here, you know, if they were making lavender salve, they had to grow the lavender here and get the beeswax here. They wouldn't necessarily get avocado oil from here, but so we tried to be really consistent about keeping it local and supporting that. And we also wanted to be able to serve the people who were unable to come. So a lot of people were shut in, a lot of the elderly weren't able to do shopping for fresh produce. And so we set up a delivery system and we offered SNAP, so the people who were in more need could come and get really fresh, locally grown and produced food. So Alicia can talk
Thank
more
you.
about
I'm going
that.
to stop you for just 1 second. Steve, you need to put on your mask. Thank you. All right, Alicia.
Thanks, y'all. I just wanted to briefly talk about our food program. We provide meals here in the valley. Our food is sourced locally. We support farmers with our food programs, so that means that we pay market price to our local farmers and then provide the food on the gift model to the community, including the deliveries like Karen said. We're also delivering to Delta, Cedar Edge, and Hotchkiss migrant workers, and really love feeding the community. And it's a great project that is more and more popular. Pretty much each week we're feeding. This week we probably fed about 100 people today. So people really appreciate it. People are happy to receive the food, and also same with the farm food. It's really great for people to receive farm fresh food. We accept SNAP and double up bucks so that low income people can receive local produce at a market price that is fair to the farmers. And we really are deeply invested in food equity and food justice. And so we feel that if the market is centrally located in town, that more people will have access to the market and all of the wonderful things that the market brings.
Thank you, Alicia. All right, well, let's start out with questions from the board for our wonderful presenters.
I'll tell you one of my concerns, not necessarily about what you're doing, but the location, and I don't know how our grass will hold up to the constant wear and tear. Is there a possibility that the food distributors or whatever they're selling could be located on the hard surfaces and let the people mingle in the other grassy areas? And secondly, with the coming of marijuana in town, you know, I think that you're going to have to be in a position to ask people that are participating in smoking marijuana to leave. So those are my comments.
We would be willing to reseed the lawn or the park at the end of the season if that was helpful. I know that in July you all don't have events, and so we were thinking that for that month we could potentially move things to the area, the pavement by the skate park and the teen center. That was a request that we would hope for. And yeah, I'm not sure that it's going to be so much traffic each week, but but I really can't say. We do want to have music, and so having the gazebo would be really nice as a venue.
So the market is on a Tuesday. It's every Tuesday, and it's 3 hours. It's from 5 to 8. So it's a pretty limited time frame.
Right, but, you know, week in and week out, the grass isn't gonna take it. Unless Travis wants to speak up and disagree, maybe you ought to jump in, Travis, because you're gonna be pounded on the grass. Yeah, so I think that we really need to be thinking about the condition, overall, or condition of our park, 'cause especially in July, we got the BMW rally, whatever we do for the 4th of July, you guys coming in, and then in August, we go with the picking in the park and stuff, so, somebody's gonna have to move off the grass, 'cause the grass won't take it.
So what about moving it to Apple Valley Park instead of Town Park?
I'm not such a big fan of that venue. Potentially, we could consider the River Park. Not going to have well, we may have a couple of bigger nights, but we're not going to get a sound system.
So generally, it'll be fairly quiet.
It'll be like
Okay.
1 to 3 musicians playing.
Okay, I can just kind of imagine the public in August saying Tuesdays and Thursdays and.
No, we're not trying to go for a picking in the
Okay.
park. We are
Good deal.
farm-centric. We are here to promote farmers.
You did mention the pavement. Is that a viable option, or would you rather only have to do that if you have to do that?
That would be an option for July, that we would consider for July.
Just for July.
Mhm.
Okay.
One of the main concerns is to have shade, when you're at,
Sure.
5 to 8 is pretty hot in July and June and August. So we were hoping to be in a place that was shady.
I do echo the concerns for the grass, the condition of the park, and reseeding is a very generous offer, and I really would love to see this thing happen. I really, really would, but we do have to consider the wear and tear on the park, and I don't know if staff has any idea what kind of extra work that would take, or, that's really my only concern is the grass, the constant wear on the park.
As long as it's in the park, people would be able to find it, that's in the vicinity, which is why, but we don't want to move it. So if we want it where people can walk and ride their bikes. That's one of the reasons that Apple Valley isn't as ideal. Even the River Park isn't quite as ideal. So we're trying to make it accessible to people. I mean, we had a lot of elderly people who, they would tell us what they wanted ahead so that we could just provide it for them in their car, or Alicia set up a whole buddy system with delivery people to go out, come and pick up the food, take their bicycles, and the high school kids and some of the younger kids would go and take it and deliver it to people, because there's a lot of them that are shut in. And a lot of people who just couldn't afford to eat, frankly. And so that COVID relief money was providing free meals. And Alicia cooked thousands of meals, and they were given away for free. There was a donation if somebody wanted to make a donation, but we feel that this is a tremendous service to the community and the needs of the community. And, maybe there's a way that, Travis could come after a week or two and assess how the park's doing. And we could look at it over time and see if there's something that needs to change to mitigate any problems. But we really feel like this is a service that is being provided for our greater community, and we'd love to see the town support what's a benefit to the community.
So I'm just picturing, I'm thinking when they have the concerts, there can be hundreds of people there, and they're all in one corner. If this could rotate throughout the park,
That's a good idea.
since maybe you don't always need to be near the
Yep.
bandstand.
Yep.
Maybe you want to be at the little picnic area one weekend, and then over near the Miners Monument another. And in July, I like the July on the concrete, and I know that would be hard, but again, setting up booths in the same spots over and over again can really mess up the grass that's already gets a lot of traffic.
Yeah, we were out there the other day. It's not looking great. I totally
Right.
understand your concerns.
Right.
And I have concerns too about the lawn at the park. And I think that moving could, it could be doable. We can just set up little flags or something for vendors, or just let them know that we're going to be in a different quadrant each week. And so if we did it like that, then maybe we could figure out, look at the park and chunk it out and figure out weekly where we'll be.
Dave?
How many, I don't have a picture of how many vendors you have or just how much space you have. Could you kind of fill me in on what your experience was last year and how many you anticipate?
Sure, sorry, excuse me for cutting you off. Last year we had 18 vendors total. On the weekly, we probably had what do you think, 15 that actually showed up the whole time. But
But it was our first year, we're gonna grow.
Yeah, so we're thinking that we'll probably have more like 20 to 25 vendors this year.
I don't know if I'm understanding you, 20 to 2,500?
Vendors. So booths, like
People that
10
were
by
selling
10s.
food.
People
They were selling
selling,
their vegetables.
people selling vegetables and crafts and prepared food and.
So,
There are restrictions, you have to have them so far apart. So we had to have, I don't know if it'll be as far apart this year as it was last year, but we had to have, a 6-foot distance. So, if you were selling the vegetables, I had to be out here. I couldn't come up and just grab them from you. We had a lot of regulations like that we had to follow. And we'll see how they are, but the tables are generally the size that you're sitting at, and there would be a space in between them.
so how many booths, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, the total we had was 18 last year.
Okay, that helps
But
me.
they didn't all come every week.
Right.
We're trying to make them come every week.
More
Yeah.
stringent guidelines this year so that people don't break out, and also because we probably will not accept all the vendors that apply, and so we want to make sure that vendors who are accepted show up.
I'm just trying.
The vendors' booths probably are not where you're gonna have a lot of traffic, it's for food. Because everybody goes to get the food, only a few people go and, they know where they're going. They go, they get their vegetables, or they get their basket or whatever, and then they leave. So, in my experience last year, the traffic wasn't around each one of the stalls. The traffic would be more at the food queue. Because the food was given away for free, and it was awesome.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Yes, Tammy.
So it sounds like it would be extra work for the staff, and I really am for this. Don't get me wrong. Is it going to be a total of 2,200 for the? What would the town make off of this? I mean, what would be the revenue generated for the town?
So the full amount due was $2,200, although there was a credit that was applied for a canceled event that had been paid in advance for that they had to cancel due to COVID. So that brought the total fees that would need to be submitted for this application process to $1,550. And then also, once they finalize the vendor list, there is the addition for $5 per vendor above 5 vendors. So any activity that happens in Town Park, when they get their final vendors of who actually signs up and pays, they submit the vendor list and then they're invoiced for the additional vendors at that time. So approximately another, maybe 15 additional vendors over the 5 that are included at $5 a piece. So that's not a substantial amount over the application fee.
Is that in keeping with the cost of Cherry Days, or is this? Okay.
Cindy?
We will also be receiving applicable sales tax that they're required to submit to the Department of Revenue.
That was going to be my question, is how is sales tax going to be assured? Because Mountain Harvest and Cherry Days, the organizers are required to make sure that everybody has their sales tax license so that it does get collected.
And along with that, are we going to request insurance?
We have insurance. My insurance company just sent me the thing today, and so I forwarded it over during this meeting. Sorry, I just got it.
I think this is a wonderful idea. Last year when it was in operation up at the farm, I was going, downtown, can we have this downtown? So that might also, I mean, this may be, we have further discussion on street closures, but you know, maybe bringing it to Maine or to Grand Avenue during July.
It's so hot on Grand Avenue.
I agree.
I mean,
but
the
anyhow,
vegetables would just be wilted and all the people would be exhausted.
so yeah, having it, I think this is a wonderful idea. Really, I really would like to see this happen. Huh? It's like having Cherry Days every week and Mountain Harvest every week. I think it's wonderful. Okay. Yes, Tammy.
I was just going to make a motion. Okay. I move that we approve the Learning Council's request for a large park event, a farmer's market. Is it, we're calling it a farmer's market? To be held, oh, I had it written down. To be held each Tuesday of the month from 5 to 8 between May and October, with the caveat that the park's condition be assessed after the first month and see if we need to move you around. Does that work? To see if the event would need to move around the park to save the grass.
And
Okay.
is it acceptable for us to go into the pavement area and around the teen center and by the skate park, especially in July when we can't be in the park? Yeah?
Mayor, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask him to be on the street that goes down inside the park, down towards the side to the playground. It's shaded in the afternoon. I think that'll preserve the grass. The portion of the park that's they're contemplating using takes a beating. We don't know what it's going to be this summer, if we're going to have a drought. But over the last few years, we've continued to see that grass, that side of the park, continue to deteriorate. And I think it's unwise on our part to continue to pound that area when we could avoid that by simply asking them to set up on the asphalt. And it's in the shade. They're not going to be subjected to the heat because it's at 5 p.m. when the sun is lower on the horizon and those trees shade that whole area. So if the motion is going to go the way it is, I'm going to vote against it because of that reason.
Okay, here's a suggestion. What if you put the food on the pavement and everything else goes on the grass? Since that's where most of the traffic is. If you put it so that the traffic goes on the pavement to pick up the food, even though you put the food service, say, in the barbecue shelters or whatever. Okay. Well, we do have a motion. We have a second. Comments from the public? Yes, Suzanne. Please come to the mic. Turn it on.
I think this sounds like a fantastic idea. I really would love to see a farmer's market in town. I do think the park and the condition of the grass is a concern. We don't know. I mean, the park is really iffy right now. I don't think we have a good system for maintenance yet. we're going to be using town employees. In the past, we had a contractor that had no problem coming down at 9 or 10 at night to work the sprinkler systems. So it's a little iffy to start saying that we will commit our grass to this. That center lane down the center of the park is actually quite nice. And I don't know how setting up the booths are, but you can actually drive down there and unload your stuff. And there's no traffic on the grass. I think farmers especially should understand and appreciate what compaction does. All that park gets is compaction. We take it so for granted. All we do is use it to walk and jump and run on. And I think just this year, maybe for the first year, we can reserve it to that center area. It's quite lovely, actually. I would like perhaps if the staff could do an assessment of that center area, measure it out, see what the potential for how many booths could, because we're going to have this question coming up with future entities that come wanting to use the park. So I think it would be really good to figure out what we've got in that space and how useful it is and how usable, and maybe even have a diagram that we can submit to these groups saying, this is what we have. We'd love you to use this section because I think it would be great. We want to see you here, but this is a great solution. Another thing is if you use the sprinkler system in the evening, I mean, in the hottest part of the summer when we all want to be cool under the trees, well, the trees want some water too. And maybe we need to be watering the grass during that time of the day. I don't know what the employee situation is going to be. But, you know, if you have a few sprinklers going in on the grass, that's like a swamp cooler. That can cool down the air temperature under those trees on the paved area too. But that paved area, it might not sound nice because the word pavement kind of has a bad connotation, I guess. But if you actually go and stand on it and look around, I think it has got a lot more potential than we realize. And so thanks for listening to me. I thought it was maybe the motion was a little bit limiting in starting to determine exactly where they were going to be in the motion. I was thinking that maybe you know, you want to do more of a TBD based on public, you know, based on a little bit of an assessment before you get that detailed with the motion. So, but I appreciate you considering this. I think it sounds like a great idea. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Suzanne. Steve? Turn on the microphone, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We need to sing a birthday song for Alyssa. It was just her birthday last week. we share the same birthday.
Okay.
And Karen and Alyssa had the most amazing event last year. Now, it is on Tuesday evenings, so we need to have a little screen over in the park so that if people want to participate in the town council meeting, they can do that from the park. I was just on the YouTube channel watching the meeting here. It was fantastic. Real clear, really nice addition. But, you know, when Karen was saying that, I'm going to miss it up there. It was such an amazing event. But they are getting, it's growing every week. It's getting bigger and bigger. And they feed so many people, including myself, where there was times where it was the best meal I had all week, seriously. I'm not embellishing that one bit. And you know, and one thing that I think that we should consider is that on the federal level, we have a Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack from Iowa, who was President Obama's Secretary of Agriculture for the entire 8 years of the Obama administration. They are committed on the federal level in a big way to start a new income stream for the farmers that I think this town should be a pioneer in this, and that's paying the farmers to bank excess atmospheric carbon back into the soils. And for this area, you all saw the New York Times article, that 2-page spread, where they were talking about the Paonia Valley Delta, 2 pages, maybe 6 months ago, and the drought. if they want to pay the farmers to bank carbon from the atmosphere, the more carbon you get in the soil, the more water retention you get in the soil. The more carbon you get into the soil, the more nutritious your food is grown in those soils. And if we get serious about this, and say pay $35 a ton or so, that gets the farmers interested in it. We spoke about this once in the United States Congress. We threw out a price of it, we meaning the United States, we threw out a price of $1.63 a ton. No farmer in their right mind wants to get involved with a program at $1.63 a ton. But this is something that could really be really good for this valley in a lot of ways. And
Okay, are we still talking about the farmer's market?
well, we are in the sense that this is a visible part to be presenting this new income stream. What Karen and Alyssa have done last year was absolutely amazing, and I think maybe we have some the sunscreen, the cloth that you use for the sunscreen, to try it out a few weeks, where you put that out on the grass. People won't be tearing it up nearly as much if you have that cloth out on the grass. I think you should give them as much leeway as they need out at the park to see this be successful, because it was quite amazing what they did last year.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Any other public comment? Yes.
Casper Kyle, 206 Meadowbrook Boulevard. I just wanted to quickly note that I feel like the grass is a curable issue with the farmer's market, and that every farmer's market that I've been to has been in a park. And so I feel like until it is a problem, that there maybe could be a solution with maintenance and working to not make the park worse, but to give them a chance to have their farmers market, and with the caveat that the park is maintained, and that possibly there's a compromise that could be found there. That's all.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right, we have a motion and a second. Yes, Tammy.
We're always learning. I'm going to withdraw my motion and let somebody else do it. I do believe that the booths should be, my brain was around the teen center. When she said teen center, I pictured around the teen center. I did not picture that nice, long, shady, really nice place where all the other food booths like to set up during the summer. So I withdraw my motion with no regrets, and
Okay.
yeah.
Would
Hope
someone
that we
like
can get
to
a better
make
motion.
another motion on this?
I'll take a stab at it. I'd like to move that we approve the Learning Council's proposal for a market at the town, and direct our staff to work with the Learning Council to mediate any issues on the park.
All right, do we have a second on that one?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Same objection.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion passes. Congratulations, we have a farmer's market in the town. I would just encourage you, Alicia, to keep touch with Travis, and let's make sure that the grass stays good. Thank you so much. All right, moving on.
Can I request a recess, please?
Let's take a 5-minute recess. So we're back here at 8:46. And this is primarily because there is another COVID relief bill coming down the track, and nobody's, to my knowledge, knows what the exact wording is, but if we can continue our disaster declaration until the end of the year, then we can be qualified for money that we may not be able to get otherwise. That does not mean that if the county goes green or the governor restricts or takes off the mask order or whatever, that we can just go ahead and rescind the order at any time. But this keeps it in effect until the end of the year. Any discussion on that? All right. Can I have a motion? Turn on your mic, Bill. Thank you.
I move that we approve resolution 2021-05, local disaster resolution.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Yes.
If we find out that the grants don't necessarily require that, could we rescind the motion then
Whenever
later?
we want
Okay, I just think that'd be important because I think that we're not necessarily in a disaster right now.
Yeah, I think there would be parts of the country who would disagree with you completely on that one. Anyhow, we have a motion and a second. Anything from the public? Okay, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Let's move on to the discussion.
Packets together in time. We're also concerned about the constraints on staff where we have meetings every 2 weeks, and it seems like you just finish a meeting, finish getting the minutes done, and boom, you're preparing for the next meeting. And it's just a pretty intense schedule. So part of our discussion has been a suggestion that we try a 3-week schedule instead of a 2-week schedule. And that the board, of course, would have to authorize our finance committee to go over the checks and approve some of our expenditures in advance. But that would really be the only constraint. One of the things we're thinking about is getting much more disciplined with the public about requiring any information coming into the packets to be available 1 week before the meeting, so that the people that are working on the agenda can have a timely way to develop the packets so the packets are full and complete by Friday before the meeting. And then when we meet, we have time over the weekend, citizens have time over the weekend, and there won't be this flurry of additions to the packet just before we meet on Tuesday. So that's one of the considerations we've had. We've had wild and crazy ideas too, like having our first meeting as a regular meeting to make decisions, but our second meeting would be a casino night. We would all enjoy each other's company while we're gaming, and we could discuss town business. But
can we have legalized gambling, and then the
right,
town can make some
exactly.
money?
But you know, one thing, this every 2 weeks and having a meeting just seems to cause a lot of extra stress on staff. We see, you know, we aren't very as clear as we could be on priorities, and so our proposal is really around that we start trying the idea of meeting every 3 weeks, being much more disciplined with our citizens about when information has to come in, so people have plenty of time to look at what we're doing and think about it, and then come into the meeting.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, Karen.
We have checked this out with some other towns. Corinne did, and Bo did, that have tried this, and it does work. It works a lot less stress and a lot more community participation. There's also some other, at every 3 weeks, you have time in between to have a work session if you need a work session. If there's a particular question that's going to come before the board, then there's time in the middle to schedule a work session. And there's one other thing, it allows some time for our staff to go on vacation. Because right now they cannot there's no time for them to take a vacation. So at least there's, you know, they can at least have 5 days maybe in between. So I hope you approve it.
Okay, other comments?
But you know, typically our meetings run 3 hours. Sometimes we exceed that. How are you going to try and cram 6 hours into one meeting a month, and maybe 2 meetings every other month? that would be my concern, is that we end up overloading what we're doing. Not being able to get through it for hours and hours on into that one particular evening.
Could be.
So we're down here anyway. Yeah, that's my problem. We don't know.
Well, I hear the concern about, we do spend, 6, 7 hours every month discussing matters. I think that if the one possible answer to that would be rely more on the committees to do a deeper dive in their work in between meetings so that their recommendations are more fleshed out. And that could possibly save us time too. So I also see our attorney has his hand up. So.
Bo.
I was just going to comment in terms of, because I reached out, I spoke to, the town of Telluride is probably the region that also does this, and they said, once they got through, I spoke to the town attorney, and he said, once we got through the initial kind of scheduling thing, from a staff perspective, it was greatly appreciated, just because it's not, kind of completing, and then all of a sudden you have to turn around and we're preparing for the next meeting, we're putting that packet together, if you will, and so it gives a sense for just to breathe and maybe get some deeper thinking in and whatever it might be, instead of just focusing on the turnaround. I think Trustee Bear's point is a good one, right, in terms of where is that kind of potential 6-hour time frame going to come. I guess what I would propose is, if this is something that the trustees are looking at, one, there does need to be a change to the code, because the ordinance that we have says there's a meeting every 2 weeks. So that's certainly something that we would need to take into consideration. But a couple things. One, Telluride's written it in such a way that it's flexible, that they'll try to meet every 3 weeks or so, kind of, so that it allows for, if there's those weird days that, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving or something along those lines, that you could either do a 2-week, try to do a 2-week break in November to work around that, same thing for Christmas or whatever it might be. But the other avenue or aspect to Trustees Bear's point is that, well, maybe you try this with some flexibility, and if you're bumping up against it, or if you're having a workshop every other week, and so it doesn't alleviate any meetings whatsoever, I mean, then we know the answer, if you will. So, but I guess the other side of the coin is, maybe things are a little bit more focused and developed within the packet and going in, so that it does try to pay attention to the time that we have together.
Yes, Smith.
I think it's a very interesting proposition. I think, to Bo's point, I think the meetings that we would have would be more focused. I think we could get a lot of work done, and if not, then we just go back to the 2 meetings a month. So I would be in favor of trying it.
So, Bo, if we were to try this, do we need to change the ordinance prior to saying we're going to give this a 3-month run or whatever?
I don't want you to create a situation where you guys are, out of compliance. Potentially you could put together a resolution that says, hey, look, we recognize that this is the ordinance that is put forth with respect to our meetings. We're going to, try this 3-week schedule. You technically would be out of compliance with the code. The other provision that you could take a look at is, you could amend that to create more flexibility. That just says, the board will meet on Tuesdays, right? That's usually our standing date. Subject to a meeting schedule set by resolution, an annual meeting schedule set by resolution by the board, so that as we try these things out, if you will, you're not having to have an ordinance and then shift and come back and monkey around with it, play around with it, if you will. So.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a very interesting idea. My big concern was, again, disbursements, and making sure that the staff gets paid. Right, yeah, payroll is the big thing. I mean, the other things, probably we can work it out so that the bills get paid on time, and that's fine. But payroll is a big thing that rolls around every 2 weeks, and so we need to make sure that those are approved every 2 weeks.
Finance committee could still meet anyway, but in the other towns that have done it, they approve the ones that have been done and the ones that are coming up, you know, and the payroll coming, you know, and so then we meet, we look at the checks and do all that stuff as normal. But, these are things that have to be worked out. But the vendors as well, they can't go to one a month because Cindy says they get anxious. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing none. Yes, vote.
The other thing I'd float out there is I think the importance is of notification is a kind of a big thing. So I would propose that the trustees through April keep their regular meeting schedule. We can get some dates in place in terms of what that would trigger beginning in May, if you will, if that's kind of where the trustees want to go. And then I know staff will get it on the website and everything else if that was it, but because noticing is important, and I think we have it ingrained in our minds that we're the second and fourth Tuesdays. So.
Okay, comments from the public. Yes, Suzanne.
So there's an ordinance that talks about what you guys can get paid, and I don't think it's per meeting, I think it's per month. So by changing this to where you only have one meeting in 1 month, are you effectively changing your pay, which you cannot do?
That was our first consideration.
If you want to change pay, it has to be done by you for the next council. But that being said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be blunt. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. And that is for the board, and it's also for the staff. I think you would be doing the public a great disservice by this. You're basically, I mean, how do you propose to get business done when you can't make a presentation to where people can comment? You can't be doing business in the work sessions. It just will not work. And there's not going to be enough time to make a presentation and then wait until the next meeting to pass something. It's not going to work. There's too much time in between in that scenario. As far as likening this, using Telluride as an example, Telluride's a resort town. How many full-time residents actually live in Telluride that aren't like second home or vacation home residents? I think Paonia is a different town. I think you really need to get SURSA up here and DOLA up here and the Colorado Municipal League helping you guys know what it is to be a trustee. I think it was really interesting that the Grange came at the beginning of the meeting, but I'd like to see you take that time to figure out what your jobs are here. This is a really valuable time for us to learn about what town government is all about. It's a great learning experience for you. You can learn so much about government and politics at a state level, at a national level. This town council meeting is very important. Your jobs are very important. And starting to spread them out a little bit more is not helping anybody. I think you need to, I think we need to concentrate a little bit more on taking this seriously and learning what this job is all about. Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, seeing none. Bo, would you like to draft something for us for the next meeting?
I'd be happy to.
And then the other thing is, at the same time, Michelle does come up with several other issues that we probably need to look at. So maybe when we put this on the agenda, we should also include some of this other communication stuff as well. All right, thank you very much. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to point out that Crawford had a work session and a meeting every month. One meeting first Wednesday and then a work session the third Wednesday or vice versa. And that didn't work for them. They did go back to having 2 full meetings because they felt they could not get enough done with one meeting. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Thank you, Tammy. Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment as an individual trustee who tries to study my packet every time I come in. And I try to work on it on Friday, and I try to work on it over the weekend. There's a lot of research I want to do on looking at websites and other places to see what I need to be informed in when I come into these meetings. What I find with a meeting every 2 weeks is we're trying to be so responsive to the public that people can come in on Monday and Tuesday and give us stuff, and it's last minute. So now I've done this research and I have to start all over again. I'd rather see people be very measured and very thoughtful and plan to bring us things after they've thought about it rather than shooting from the hip. I feel like a lot of what we're doing is wasting our time because we can't do enough research. So that's why I'm proposing this. And I think it would be better for me as an individual. I'm sorry if I'm selfish about it, but I think I'll do a much better job as a trustee by being able to do my homework thoroughly. Thank you.
Yes, Bill.
Well, I think that the public comes to the meeting to be informed. Oftentimes the public doesn't learn about what's going on until they come to the meetings. So yeah, it's kind of inconvenient for us as trustees to get things at the last minute, but that's life as a trustee. And to have it all in there on Friday, you know, people don't work that way. They come to the meeting to hear the arguments and to speak their mind. And so I've been doing this for 5 years now. I've taken a lot, and that's what I signed up for.
Okay, well, this will be on the next agenda, obviously. So we'll discuss it again. All right, next on the agenda is the discussion of Grand Avenue street closure policies. Corinne.
Sorry, I don't know why we have the intermittent humming. So included in the packet was the municipal code information regarding street closures, along with the process that the town currently follows. And the reason that I requested to bring this before the board was because right now it's pretty wide as far as administrative approval for street closure, specifically Grand Avenue, our core commercial area. And the reason I brought this is because typically the town has only seen a few street closures a year. Every now and again there'd be an event. I know for a little bit there, Mountain Harvest Festival was on Grand Avenue. Typically our street closures were very intermittent, a couple of hours for a parade for the high school, different things like that. But there'd been a lot of conversation over the past couple of years, 3 years, about trying to utilize downtown and the core commercial area to invigorate downtown and invigorate the businesses. And then COVID happened, and we saw quite an influx of requests for street closures and events to be held outdoors and on the street. So what felt that I needed to come back to the board and start a conversation at the board level about the policies for street closures and if there needs to be any revision or what the direction is from the board for the community. Because I can tell you right now, this is generalized conversation. This is not specific to any applicant or event, but right now at Town Hall, we have applications pending that we have not approved because we let the applicants know we needed to bring this conversation, that effectively would close the streets 25 days over the next 5 months. So they start to get extensive. They start to be, some of those are different applicants that would effectively close the street for multiple hours, not always over 4, which actually it's 5, that we have a limit of 5 hours that can be approved administratively. Some of them are less than that, but they're multiple days in a row where we have a Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday from different applicants. And I really feel that with the potential for increased street closures along Grand Avenue, and being cognizant of some of the feedback we received from some business owners that they didn't feel that it was lucrative for their businesses, that the board needed to think of this in a bigger picture and potentially make modifications, or determine that you don't want to make the modifications and that you are in favor of closing the streets as applied for under our current code. Thank you.
Okay, thoughts from the board on this?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'm very hesitant about closing Main Street. I think it does have the potential to affect businesses. And so we're letting people enhance one business at the detriment of others. So I prefer to have the applicant come before the board, pitch their case, and then most of all, get approval from the businesses surrounding them. So, my thoughts.
I think it also depends on the time of day. If these are evening,
You know, closing the street on Sunday is a lot different than closing it on Saturday.
exactly. And that's what I was thinking, you know, if the evening closures are much less of a problem than daytime closures, because the core businesses that don't stay open in the evening, like Hayes Drug and Indigo Autumn and Farm and Home, their business is done. And they're the ones that have the biggest objections to street closures. So doing it in the evenings, I think, is a better thing. But, you know, I don't know that it's a bad thing to have businesses come and make their pitch to the town.
Another thing that I would be concerned about, and well, I like the idea of coming and pitching it to us. You know, we probably have said no very, very few times. One thing that we have asked, and I think it kind of deters some people, is insurance. And, you know, if we just automatically let them come, you know, they're going to have to show us that they have insurance to indemnify the town.
Other thoughts, comments? Yeah, Steve.
Well, I think with some of the restaurants, they'd like to use sidewalk space, so in the evenings that might work well. So there's been some movement in town on like Friday nights, opening things up, or Saturday nights. Again, I like what Trustee Bear is saying about, you know, have them come in and make a pitch to the town, just like tonight we've done with the park. They can hear our concerns, we can discuss back and forth and try and work it out, so. Or if that's answering our town administrator's question, though, because some of it is an administrative decision. Is that what you're asking?
Well, currently, if it's less, if it's 5 hours or less, it's administratively approved. That's what's in our municipal code. So if you know, and this is just a discussion, was just to get it started. There was a suggestion in the packet about setting a work session to discuss it, and so that the community could also, business owners have good notice and could attend. The issue is, though, right now we have a municipal code that says they can be approved if they meet all that criteria and they're less than 5 hours. And so there would be no reason for me not to. And there's no information provided that makes one of them not approvable. And even if the board does make the decision to modify that, it does have to be done via an ordinance and brought to the board and addressed. So I just really want the board and the community and the businesses to feel that they are heard and all equally represented, as well as the applicants, because there are, like I said, I have a number of them, and if they all they all would be approved. None of them provided have a reason not to approve them currently. So I just really want the board to be aware of that.
How many of them are time sensitive that would need to be approved quickly in order to?
There are a few that would need that I would need to, at a minimum, approve the ones probably over the next well, there's a 45-day requirement, so the next 45 days, the ones over the next month, would need to be, they need to be dealt with now.
And how many are there in that time frame?
I didn't bring the data, because I thought we were gonna set it for a session. I wanna say less than half dozen.
So I could probably help Corinne answer that question a little bit. Oh no, so I know that the Paradise Theater and the Blue Stage have requests for street closure for April and May. And then I believe the Northport Creative Coalition has a request for a street closure in May as well. May I don't think falls in that 45-day period because it's the end of May. So I could look on the calendar, but as somebody requesting the street closure and as a business owner on Grand Avenue, I fully respect having to come to the board and request them because I do think the businesses should be aware of the requests and how it's going to impact them. For the Paradise right now, all we can do is outdoor events safely, and so that's what we're doing. So this year is definitely a unique year for us. In the future, if the street was closed in the evening on a Friday or a Saturday night, that could affect us negatively because we're one of the few businesses that's open during those times. So I definitely, you know, when Corinne said that she wanted to bring this to the board, I felt like it was a really important conversation to have, but I wanted to make sure that I was part of that conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunshine. Yes, Bill.
Maybe Corinne, are you asking us to kind of put some boundaries on what's in the code now to take more of the responsibility of the board and to, so you could help guide the public better?
I mean, my ask is it's either or. Either decide to make the boundaries or officially state, you know, we really fully support closure for Grand Avenue for applicants that want to utilize the street for events or for an extension of business. It's really, because what I think, like happens with lots of our codes, they're drafted with what is occurring at that time, which has been very minimal. It's been a very low impact. I can tell you, prior to last year, I don't recall complaint about closing for a parade or closing for any event. But when the closings start happening rapid fire and consistently, then it became an issue. And so I was just really wanting just to bring to the board's attention the shift, the change that we're seeing when it comes to Grand Avenue activities, and find out from the board if they feel they need to modify or say, no, we're good with it and go, like one or the other.
Well, I don't know if tonight we can get all into it since it's already 9:17, so I would suggest that we set this for a work session sometime.
Sure. I mean, you know, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
It sounds like we need to put some thought into how we're going to design street closures. I don't think anybody on the board is opposed to street closures as long as they're structured right and they have the least amount of economic impact on other people. But with that said, with all the requests coming in, it's going to be hard not to interfere with other people's lives. And so I think as a board we need to put some constraints on what's in place today and through a work session.
Well, we already have one work session set for the 6th.
Well, can we have two subjects in a work session?
Sure. I don't see why not. We can do a 45-minute thing with Cassandra and then spend the rest of the time talking about this issue.
Well, we also talked about just recapping our priorities and making sure we're on track there. That doesn't have to take a huge amount of time.
Okay.
But I think having the previous retreats that we had and making sure that we're tracking with that wouldn't take a huge amount of time, but you know, all of us looking at it 15, 20 minutes and then get into this discussion. So it
Okay.
still could be done within an hour and a half, I would think.
Okay. Yes, Sunshine.
Is there something that we could do as organizers to provide you with information for that work session? My concern, again, as a business owner, is just making sure that the businesses are part of that conversation as best as we can make that happen.
Yeah, hours and times. I mean, times and dates, and this is what we're planning to do. And I think, too, part of this discussion is, for me, having the street closures, I think, is a wonderful idea. It can bring so much vibrancy downtown. And considering we're still in a flux here and probably are not going to be doing indoor events until late summer at the very earliest, that having the vibrancy of people coming downtown is a really wonderful thing. But again, we don't want to get carried away with this.
Yeah.
So if the business owners could come with what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, and for how long. So at least we get a better idea of what the scope is, of what's going on. That would be very helpful, at least for me. Yes.
And, you know, what would help us is if we had feedback from surrounding businesses. You know, in the evenings, probably nobody cares, but in the middle of the day, you have others that are going to care. So, you know, you've got to get buy-in from the other people as well.
Yes, Karen.
I'm just wondering if, since we've moved our policy to December 3rd for our COVID thing, I mean December 31st, then maybe we might even get some more street closure type barricades, et cetera, that, you know, paid for under COVID, if we're going to go whole hog into making street closures more common. And then also you have to consider when the marijuana stores open.
Right, exactly. Many things to discuss. Okay, so we have it set that we'll do it at the same work session as Cassandra's thing. Yes, Bill.
And I would ask Corinne to come to the meeting with what your thoughts are, so we have a good concrete idea of what you're thinking.
All right. All right. Let's move on to the mayor's report. I have included a written report, but I would like to verbally expand a little bit on the American Rescue Plan. They have set aside $19.5 billion in rescue money for towns under the population of 50,000. And I went on the website, I went on the web and found out there are approximately 18,000 towns in America that are 50,000 population and less. Which, if you work it out and you give equal amounts to every town, it comes to $10 million a town. However, the limitations on this are you can only get 3/4 of your budget the year prior to COVID, which, considering we had a $2.1 million budget, means that we could get from the federal government $1.5 million, which we can use on infrastructure, which means we can use it for water, we can use it for sewer, we can use it for broadband. We can't use it for streets yet. That would come in the infrastructure bill. But we have a chance here, and we may be getting a chunk of change that will actually do us some real good. So, happy news out there. And then the other thing I wanted to quickly get some board feedback on. So I am writing the AARP grant for the town, town park. And I found out we can only apply for $20,000, which kind of dynamites some of my ideas. However, I would like to present to the board. So what we are looking at is upgrading the electrical in the gazebo and looking at it around the park, maybe electrifying the one shelter that isn't electrified. Spiffing up the bathrooms, putting in industrial toilets, lighting, and repainting the whole bathrooms, resurfacing the stage in the gazebo, and maybe putting in some lighting. Now, I have talked with Mountain Harvest Festival and Pickin' in the Parks, and they request basically work on the stage and the electrical are their main issues. Mountain Harvest would like Wi-Fi, but it's just too expensive. We just can't do Wi-Fi right now. And then the other thing is the new bench by the play area. So, do you guys have a preference as to if I have to start kicking things out of this grant, what do you think, what would be your highest priorities of what I should write for?
I'll start with,
Yeah.
We've been promising the people playground equipment for a long time. You know, it wouldn't take a lot, but we need to spend a little bit of money on the playground stuff in the park.
Well, that may not be on this grant because it's AARP.
Well, okay, but you need some place for the grandparents to watch the kids.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
that bench.
And the kids need somewhere to play.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I like it, Bill. All right, any other suggestions?
I think I think that electrification is really, really important for the events that we're trying to have. But also, I've noticed that when we used to have Wi-Fi at that park.
I know we did for 1 year.
Yeah, and it was really great. A lot of people were using it, and it was a neat thing.
Yeah.
And if there's a way to bring it back, that would be a higher priority. Some
Well,
of the other things.
With that $750,000 that we may be getting off the grant, I mean, broadband is in that, and maybe we can include that in the broadband. But at this point, the only bid we have is like $59,000 to do that, and this ARP grant is not going to cover that. Paint the toilets. Yeah, I need I would love to have new bathrooms, but again, senior toilets, yes. Okay, all right, that's all I have. So let's move on to quickly finance and personnel. Yes.
I think your ideas sound really great. I was just wondering, when we apply for grants, do we have to have a resolution first, or do you do the resolution afterwards? Okay, thank you.
All right. Finance personnel?
We're meeting at 9:30 to 11 tomorrow. We're going to be talking about fund balances, PTO, and some of the audit, and anyone's welcome to come in and watch what we do.
Okay.
And join in on the discussion.
All right. Government affairs, public safety, Mick?
The short-term rental survey will go live on April 1st. It will be posted on the town website with paper copies available at Town Hall. It will also be on the town Facebook page, on upcoming water bills, and on flyers in town.
Great.
The GAPS committee will make recommendations to the board based on survey results in May. We also received a request from a community member to place a moratorium on short-term rentals while we are in the process of revising our code. Of course, our committee's preference is to make sure our current code and policies are very clear by highlighting them on the town website. A moratorium would be a board and legal decision, of course. Also, the draft ordinance for ADUs will be reviewed by the Planning Commission before coming back before the board for a public hearing. GAPS will begin drafting a food truck ordinance based on feedback from the public at the Let's Talk session and from the board at the first meeting in March. That ordinance will come back before the board for consideration, and GAPS will notify all of the Let's Talk attendees, restaurant owners, food truck owners in town that may wish to comment on that draft ordinance. The next GAP meeting will be held April 7th at 10 a.m. in person at Town Hall, and the public is welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mick. All right. Public Works, Utilities, Facilities?
We met earlier in the month. We reported on that. We won't meet again until next month.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything from the tree board?
Sure. The tree board is going to start working on page 38 of the State Forest Service tree survey, which is the long and short-term recommendations, to see how we can help the town with that. Arbor Day is Friday the 30th, April 30th. We are, we were originally thinking maybe not doing an Arbor Day because there just seemed to be so many things in the way, but we've decided to try and get a tree or two planted, possibly on Box Elder, where some trees were removed last year, but we are meeting on April 20th, and we will discuss that, so I should have the information to the board by the whatever that is, the fourth Tuesday of the month, by the last meeting, which is before Arbor Day. The poster contest, the annual poster contest sponsored by the Colorado Tree Coalition. We will have posters from the Paonia Elementary School 5th grade and the NIFSIS 5th grade in that contest. And you may recall that in 2019, Bodie Gilroy put Paonia on the tree map by winning that statewide contest. So we're hoping for another big win. And that's...
Do you have much more? Because we have less than a minute.
Okay, and that's all I have.
All right, well, it is 9:30. I think the Advisory Water Committee has not met, so. All right.
We meet at 5 o'clock tomorrow at Town Hall.
Okay. All right, well then I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.